In this lecture, we are going to configure the AWS CLI. So I want you to do it properly. That means that your computer, just to get an idea of how it works, your computer will access the AWS network and your AWS accounts using the CLI, the command line interface, over the World Wide Web. And so when you connect your computer to the CLI and to your AWS accounts, it will check for credentials and permissions. And so we'll learn how to set up these credentials and how to protect them. And also, I want to say right now, do not share your AWS access key and secret key with anyone. They're just like your username and your password, and you should not share them or show it to anyone. In this lecture, I'm going to show mine to you, but right after, I'm going to invalidate them, okay? So let's get started. Now that we have set up our AWS CLI, we need to configure it. And to do this, we need to get access credentials from the IAM service. So let's navigate to the IAM service, click on users, find your user, and then click on security credentials. So here is basically how you can log in and get your security credentials. Access keys is what we will put into our AWS configure command. So the first thing you have to do is to create an access key, and it says success. This is the only time that the secret access key can be viewed or downloaded, and you cannot recover them later. So the idea is that these keys, you need to save them somewhere. So you click on download CSV file and so on. These keys are super secret. Right now I'm showing you mine, but I will make them inactive right after this lecture. Otherwise you can use my account. So what I have to do is, and don't do this with your colleagues, okay, is to get the access key ID and the secret access key. So let's go ahead and configure our AWS CLI. I'll keep this open just for a little bit. We go to the CLI and type AWS configure. And this basically prompts us for the access key ID. Fairly easy. I can take the one from here and paste it, then press enter. I also need the secret access key, which I can copy from here and paste it. Then you get to the default region name. And this region name is wherever your AWS account is. For me, I'm operating in EU West 3, but based where you are in the world and what you've been doing this tutorial so far, you can choose whatever region you want. Finally, the default output format is none. We can leave it as the default. Press enter, and here we go. The AWS CLI is configured. If you type AWS CLI configure again, basically it shows you that you have an access key ID, that you have a secret access key, here's the region name, and here's the format, and you could modify those if you wanted to. What happens is that when you run this AWS configure command, it goes and creates some files into a small folder called .aws on Linux and Mac, and it's also called .aws, but it's somewhere else on Windows, and you can just type AWS configure Windows just to see where it is. So it creates two files, one called config and one called credentials. So if we just look at what these files are, if we look at the config file, it says by default that the region is EU West 3, and that means that my AWS CLI calls will, by the way, default to this region. Now, if I cat the other file, so if I want to print what the other file is, the credentials, we can see that by default, it will use this AWS access key ID and this AWS secret key. So these files are not to be shared with anyone, of course, and that's it. So this is how you configure the AWS CLI. Now, let me just show you how to invalidate your configuration. So what I'm going to do is basically delete everything. So I'll delete this one. By the way, you can make inactive as well if you wanted to. Temporarily just make inactive, but I'll go ahead and delete these two. So basically you cannot access my AWS account. And what I will do offline is create a new access key and use these access key to configure my AWS CLI. So once you have done that, we're all good to get started onto the practice with the CLI. So see you in the next lecture.